Okay, so I just started my recording, plus it's live on Facebook, so the video will be on Facebook too. Um, okay, so yeah, we're going to talk about why do we want to learn about natal charts? Why do we care about those? What information is in there? And then also like technically how to get a natal chart and how to look at it, how to break it down into the pieces so that you can even know where to begin with your research. So that's kind of a gist of what you can expect from today's session. As far as if you have questions as we go, don't hesitate to put those in the chat. And then every so often I'll stop and we will catch up on questions. Let me do this work. Yeah, so I am Carly Wharton. Thank you so much, Kendara, for having me here at your meetup group. I'm super excited to be able to offer this session. I did title it Astro 101, Easy Introductions to Natal Charts and How to Read Them. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to get this where it's not going to Easy Introductions to Natal Charts and How to Read Them. So I do offer sessions where I allow people to pay me to read their natal chart to them. And so, you know, you might wonder, why is somebody who's selling natal chart sessions trying to teach other people how to read their own chart? And that's because this information is too good to not connect people with it far and wide, regardless of if they have the means to pay for a professional reading. There is literally boatloads of information that you can get just by Googling stuff on the internet, and that's totally free. It's free to get a natal chart. It's free to do your own research as long as you know the right words to type into Google. So that's really my goal here today. That said, like I said, I have a lot of other stuff. So one of those series is called Astro Beginners, and those videos are available now on my YouTube channel. So you can go back and watch the recordings that I've done of the 12 zodiac archetypes, so the 12 zodiac signs and the energy for each of those, the 12 houses, what that means, and then a description and in-depth look at all the personal and social planets. So all of those videos are already available. And then Advanced Astro, which has a different set of topics where we dig even deeper, those sessions are coming soon. I haven't done them yet, but I have a general idea that these will be the sessions. And so as we go through the summer, these will happen. And as they are, I'll record them and put them on my YouTube channel. So you can either join live or watch the recording afterwards. The other thing I do is I offer free mini chart readings every Wednesday. And you're welcome to come every single week. Some people do. Some people get a chart reading every week. Others just observe and Google stuff as we go along. And there, the goal is the same, to teach people how to do their own research because it's free and it's somewhat easy once you get the hang of it. And there's so much information that can be so helpful as we go through life and trying to understand ourselves and make sense of things. The natal chart has a lot of good information that can help us connect some of those dots. So for today, though, the focus really is how to do your own research. So how to look at a natal chart, understand what you're looking at, and be able to pick out the words of, like, if I type this into Google, I'm going to be able to understand what this means. So that's how today's session is going to go. So not a whole lot of time for examples. We'll get to the end. There's like 20 minutes for questions thereabouts. So if you have any questions or examples, we can do those then. But for today, it's more like how to read the chart to the point of knowing what to even research as you get into Googling, because there's a lot out there. So it is totally free. It's a free process as long as you have this information. If you know the date of your birth, the location, and the time, preferably, you can pull your natal chart. And even if you don't know the time, like if you're missing your birth certificate or if it's just not on there, you can still get most of your natal chart. There's just certain pieces that will be missing if you don't know the time. So having the time is preferable. You get more out of it, but it's not totally required. And what is it? Like, why do I even care about what my natal chart is and what does it say about me? Because I am looking at, this is where my spiritual beliefs merge with my astrological beliefs, and you don't have to have any kind of certain spiritual belief around astrology. I think it's pretty flexible as far as a vehicle that accommodates a lot of different religious and spiritual beliefs. There's lots of different people in lots of different faiths that are still practicing astrology and learning from it. How I personally look at it, big disclaimer around personally, is that it's a map of our soul's mission. That I personally believe that we chose our entry point into our life. So we decided when we were going to be born and where and to who and in what family. All of that was kind of part of an agreement that happened way before our actual birth. And so the timing of that was on purpose. And so if you go from that belief, whether you hold it or not, I'm looking at it like we chose the moment of our birth. We basically wrote our natal chart ourselves before we were born. We knew where the planets would be. They move on a very predictable rotation. We were able to align that energy so that it would be perfect to suit us in whatever mission it was that we were coming forward to do. I believe we all have a reason. You know, we all came forward into our lives for a specific purpose. That's my belief. You don't have to agree with that part of it to still find value in your natal chart. But that's how I look at it. So as I crack open a new natal chart, I very much feel like I'm looking inside the person's toolbox at the different tools that they brought with them. So given that this is your energy, and we know, or I assume, that your energy is perfect for what you came here to do, what can we understand by looking at your tools about the job that they're for? You know, kind of work backwards from understanding your energy, and then what kind of an environment is going to be an environment where you thrive, where you get your needs met, where people understand you, where you're headed in a positive direction, you're able to make a positive impact, whatever it is that you feel like you're being called to do. We can really understand, like, you know, we're all just houseplants with more complicated emotions. We can understand how much light do we need, how much water do we need, how much heat, what's the temperature that we like. We all have a different recipe for what is going to help us feel like our soul is accomplishing our mission. And I feel like our natal chart, sometimes called a birth chart, is perfect for giving context to those conversations. It's, you know, some people wish they could find really specific answers in there, like, okay, so what's my perfect job? What am I supposed to do? And I think it's more of a conversation starter. Like, this is more about the energy soup that you're sitting in. And then you have free will, you have dreams, you have your own desires, and those are kind of something separate. So this is a piece of understanding the bigger picture of what we came forward to do. So your unique astrology holds a lot of answers. And really what it is that, you know, you think about the place of your birth, the moment of your birth, like go back there in your imagination and be in that moment of you making your entry into the world, and now pause and look up to the sky, to the sky, the universe surrounding our planet here. And the natal chart is a snapshot of the sky at the time of your entry. So while the planets were sitting how they were sitting, they had a unique energy about them. It takes, like, I don't even know. I think I saw it one time. It was like over 100,000 years for the planets to come back and like do it again, like be exactly how they were when you came. Like, that's a very unique point in time. And so we have that uniqueness, just like our DNA or our fingerprint. Our natal chart is unique to us. And so it's just a snapshot. It just shows where everything was at the moment of your birth. And basically that energy is somewhat encoded on your being, is how I think about it, is like you took that snapshot of energy and you're kind of carrying it forward for the rest of your physical life, you know? And that's just kind of how that works. That's why we like to understand it, because they all point to something a little bit different. When we think about our life and how do we live a soul-fulfilling life, there's a lot of different factors there. You know, there's our career, there's our personal relationships, there's our home life, there's, are we living our passions? Are we, you know, going through old patterns that we don't like or understand, but we don't know how to figure it out? Like, what's going on in our life? There's so many different facets of human, so many different ways that we perceive ourselves and relate to ourselves. And so when you look at the natal chart, it is complex. There's a ton of information in a small little space, but that's because you can get so much out of it. So many different areas of life can have light shed on them by digging into the different pieces of the natal chart. Again, if you know how to unpack it. So for starters, you can pull your own chart and others. I mean, you can pull anybody's chart if you have those details, the birth date, the location, and the time. Um, that's like a really common meme in the astrology groups is like, so how do I ask this guy that I'm newly dating, like what time he was born? Like, what's a way to do that without being creepy? It's like, no, it's creepy no matter what. Like, you just got to fess up and say, I want to pull your natal chart. Like, can I have the time you were born? So yeah, it's a thing. Like once you figure out you can like really understand a person, like you're wanting to see the natal chart of just about anybody you're coming into contact with. So it's free. You can pull as many natal charts as you want. The one that I started with that I do recommend if you are just getting started, I like Cafe Astrology because it gives you a whole report. It's like 20 pages of all, yeah, that's Kendara's holding hers up. Like it's a whole flip through it, tons and tons and tons of breaking it down and giving you a paragraph of what does that actually mean. And the first time I read mine, it was just like epiphany after epiphany of like, holy shit, how do they know this? How could they possibly know all of this about me just with my birthday, the time, and the location of where I was born? Like that blew my freaking mind. So Cafe Astrology, really nice, gives you a whole report, and it makes the research part easier because it gives you your starting points like all in one place. And the header of each section then is also something you could take that header like sun, sextile, moon, which who the hell knows what that means, but they're giving you a paragraph, and if you wanted to read more, you could just Google the header out of the report and go down whatever rabbit hole you want. Today, I use a site called astro.com. I like astro.com because you can keep a whole archive of all the reports that you've ever collected over time. The free version lets you have up to 100, and I need to just bite the bullet and pay the $11 to like upgrade and be able to have more than 100. But all the graphics that I'm going to use today came out of astro.com. So when you look across different sites, the graphics are going to look a little bit different. That's the whole point of software, but the pieces and the components should be about the same. Like the tables that are included and the way you would read it and put the pieces together, going to still be about the same. So not to fear if you were using a different site. Okay, so before we actually get into the natal chart, like demonstration of how do we go about unpacking, I see the chat going, and I'm totally fine if that's just conversation. Are there any questions to answer before we dive into actually looking at a chart? Seems like maybe not. Oh, Miho, yeah, we can't hear you for some reason. Gosh darn it. Oh, looks like she's gonna put it in the chat. That's perfect.
Also, Carly, would you put your contact info in the chat? For some reason, I don't have it.
That's no worries. While she's typing hers, I'll type here.
And then I'll just keep putting it up every 15 or 20 minutes for people to have it. Thank you.
Yeah, so if you don't, so she's asking if we don't know the birth time. I heard some people use 12 p.m., so noon. Yeah, if you don't know it and you still want to look at it with the parts that'll come onto the chart if you know the time, get as close as you can. And then I'll show you when we get there which piece that is that you really do need the exact time. Otherwise, it'll show up on the chart, but it might not be true. It might not, I mean, and so you can't really use that information. You can only get so far with it if you're not for sure on the birth time. But you could still get pretty close and get an idea, see what it would look like. Any other questions? Very good.
Misha has a question. She wants to know if you can put in the variable you have added in charts. Was it transits? I don't know what it means because I'm not an astrologer. I'm just reading the question.
I don't know what it
Well, Carly, so when you like pull the chart, and I know that like when you looked at mine, it looked different than the one that I had pulled, because like you had added transits, or I think that's what it was called. Like you had checked a different box or something than I had checked, or checked more boxes or something. And so I've been trying to figure out how to pull the same report that you had pulled, I guess. And so that's what I was just trying to figure out, is how to pull the same type of report that you were pulling, I guess.
Yeah, so let me just walk through it.
Just let me know, yeah.
Nope, let me just walk through it real quick. So this is myastro.com, and we just click into my Astro, and it's having me log in. And so here's my list of charts. And if I want to pull a chart, I click on the name. And for a long time, when I very first started, I only ever clicked on this first option. It's a one click, get a chart, get in and get out, like no additional options. So it's super easy, especially for beginners. Once you start figuring out, there's some cool stuff that you can do if you really want to dig into the options. So that's what extended chart selection is for. And that's where I go to now. The main reason I learned how to do extended chart selection was this right here. I wanted to be able to turn on the south node. It's always showing the north node. The south node is always opposite. I really wanted to be able to see it on the chart. So I figured out how to turn that on. And then through all of that, I also turn on to all objects under the aspects. So that means like those crazy lines in the middle, I want to see them all. I like to visualize it with all of them. To me, less is not more. I want to see everything in the craziness and then let it make sense to me from there. So that is how you would do that. And then you can click to show the chart. And then transits, I have a slide on transits, so I'm not going to get into that just yet. But basically, you can turn them on right here. And we'll talk about what that is here in a second. And so you turn on the transits and it'll add them to your chart. So now we have the little
Okay.
So that is a demo of how to actually pull your chart on astro.com. Cafe Astrology is a little bit more straightforward. It just has you enter your details and you get the report. And so that one is, yeah, that's good.
Okay, yeah, I was just trying to figure out how to, okay, now I understand. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I have a tiny question.
Okay.
So I was born via cesarean, so it was kind of like a longer process than I guess natural birth was that. So like my parents and I were talking about it. We're pretty sure it was like 12 a.m. somewhere in the middle of 11 and 1. Do you know if there's like any, I don't know how to say this, like people who are delivered via cesarean, like the way that affects like what time they were born or whatever?
So this is, I feel like, more of a spiritual question than an astrological question. At least that's how I'm going to answer it. I personally believe that like part of choosing your entry point was understanding the birth process that would be on the end of that. And so whatever time you were born or like took your first breath out in the world, I think that that's the time that it was meant to be. Like I think any delays or speeding up or like, yeah, even if it doesn't like go as planned or if there's difficulties or something like that, I tend to still believe that it was the right time, that the entry was the way that it was intended to be. And sometimes that includes hardships, and there's things in the chart that point to difficult entries into the world. there are different placements to look at. If your mom's pregnancy was especially hard, if you were preemie, if you had a difficult birth situation, like there are indicators for that in the chart.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Well, and it's interesting because so many more babies are coming via C-section, the birth times, like as a proportion, are becoming skewed because most C-sections are planned for like first thing in the morning. And so the amount of babies born in the afternoon or in the overnight, like those would be emergency C-sections and those still happen. But like if it's a planned C-section, and the time of birth is where you get your rising sign and the placement of everything in the houses. So it was something like the way that is happening, it's like all these C-section babies are winding up with their sun in the 10th house. And that has like a whole ramification on society. Like that was a really interesting article. So the time of birth, it matters, but I tend to believe that like you knew what it would be. Like that was part of the choosing of how it would go.
Yeah. Yeah, I was very much an emergency, so it was not planned at all.
Yeah. So yeah, it'd be interesting to look and see in your personal chart if there are any of those things that indicate a traumatic entry into the world. I mean, obviously you survived it, and that's what trauma is like kind of guiding us and pointing us in certain directions. And so yeah, it would be interesting to see what's in your chart.
Thank you.
You bet. So Floyd, I see your question there. A traumatic entry could be indicated in the 8th house. There are lots of different ways that it could be indicated, and honestly, that is the advanced astro sessions that I highlighted earlier. That's kind of not trauma specifically, but how do you pick out those more intricate life experiences out of a chart? What are the aspects? What are the transits? That's when you're really getting into the specifics of trying to do what's called predictive astrology, where you try to understand based on the energy soup of the planets and where they are, like what does that mean in terms of influencing your personal natal chart? So Suzanne, I see your question of trauma astrology. Yes, totally. I think it's a whole thing for sure. And then, whoops. Suzanne also asked, what part of the chart would you look at to determine indications of birth trauma? It's a good question, and I would totally do a YouTube video on it someday. But I think that's like getting off the track of what we're going to do here in this, which is how to do your own research, which I think, with those tools in your toolbox, you could also more easily read what you're going to find when you start doing your own research. So if you did Google what are indicators of trauma in a birth chart, you're going to find articles of people that are trying to answer that question. So then it's just a matter of being able to understand what they're writing. And I think today's session is definitely going to help with that. Does it matter what name and gender you put? I don't think so. That is like getting into a whole nother conversation, which we're going to touch on briefly today, about feminine and masculine energy and how we all have both. And we all use both of those types of energy in different ways. And really, that has nothing to do with our gender. So there are men who have more feminine energy. There are women who have more masculine energy. There are people who have like equal amounts of both. And so we're going to get into all of that as part of one of the little tables that it gives you on the natal chart picture, which we haven't even looked at a natal chart yet. We're, a solid 30 minutes in here, and we haven't even looked at one because it's a lot. It's just a lot to look at. There's a lot of information in a very small space. And that's why we're not going to spend a whole lot of time looking at this whole thing, because that's just an assault to the eye, because there's just so many things, especially if you have no idea what you're looking at. But this is what it is. These are the general pieces that across all the different sites, there are going to be these same elements of a natal chart. And so we're gonna, by the time we finish this session, I can basically guarantee you would be confident to look at this and be able to Google and start researching your own natal chart. So we're gonna start with the natal chart wheel. So the wheel itself, the circle that along the outside, I get told all the time, this is just hieroglyphics to me. I don't know what any of these symbols mean. I totally get it. You don't have to know what they mean. But around the outside, there are all 12 of the zodiac signs. So right off the bat, like going back to the moment of you making your entry and you looked up at the sky and your natal chart is a snapshot of the sky always has all 12 zodiac energies present and accounted for. So we are all 12 of the zodiac energies. That being said, we all mix and match in very different ways that make it look a lot different. You know, you would be hard pressed to figure out that we're all using the same energies. By the way, some of us are so different, but that's okay because the energies, they play nicely together. They don't get along sometimes. And all of that is wrapped up in your natal chart. So the wheel itself, it always goes in the same order. Like the first zodiac sign is Aries, and then Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. So they all go in that order every single time. On everybody's natal chart, that wheel is the same. It's in the same order. What's different about it is which sign is on the rising sign. And the rising sign is this line right here. In the center, across the horizon of your chart, is a line that has AC on the left side and DC on the right side. That line itself is the horizon, like the metaphorical and the literal horizon. At the moment of your birth, the AC line is pointing towards the eastern horizon. So like in this chart, this is my chart, it's pointing at 0 degrees, AC 0, we'll get into degrees here in just a minute. It's at 0 degrees Taurus. And so because of that, my wheel is shifted so that 0 degrees Taurus is exactly on that AC point, and the rest of them go around from there. So depending on what your rising sign is, that tells you which sign is going to be in which house. That's the part that you need the birth time for. And so let's say you picked a birth time that was close. That might work, but these rising signs, they change once about every hour. So if you're a few hours off, the whole chart is now crooked. The placements are the same, but it's rotated funny, and that's not right. So you can try to put the birth time in there. I usually just leave it off and focus into the placements themselves, which can still tell you a lot. That being said, there are people, I do believe that they can do this. I do, technically. But I have a healthy amount of skepticism, so I'll just add that as I throw this out there, that there are people who rectify your birth time, and I believe usually they're doing that through some type of divination tool, like a pendulum or something like that, and they can, like, through psychic means, tell you your birth time. People charge money for that service. So that's a possibility if you would like to seek that out. I don't do that. Like I said, I do believe people can do that. I don't personally think I would be able to do that. So that's probably why I can't. But that's a thing, birth time rectification. Because knowing the houses, which and your rising sign, like, it's valuable information. Some people want that birth time, and I totally get it. Usually it's on your birth certificate if you have one of those. Unless you were born like in a super rural town back in the day, they didn't have birth times on there, and so then you're just kind of SOL. Okay, so the houses I've mentioned just a couple times, and the chart up in the right, that's the whole chart. And through that you can see the pie slices, the slices of the pie, the triangle chunks. Those are the houses. If you look around the center of the wheel, like in the smaller graphic, and then I've blown it up here bigger. So the first house always is starting where that AC line is. So every single person's first house is right there. That's true. The houses are always in this order, and they're always the first house coming off the rising sign, and then second, third, fourth, and it goes around counterclockwise. The 12th house is always right on top of the rising sign. So that's true for everybody. And then the part that turns are the different zodiac signs, the wheel on the outside. And that's what's rotating to make the rising sign correct. And then it informs like which sign is going to be in all of the other houses. So the houses, basically the slide that I showed earlier were like all of these different pieces of our life, our relationships, our family, our home life, our career, all of that are different areas of our life. And each of those is represented by one of the 12 houses. The 12 houses, basically you could Google like which house rules mother-in-laws, and there's a house that rules that. Like there's like the 5th house rules your first child, the 7th house rules your second child, the 9th house rules your third child, the 11th house rules your 4th child. Like there's all of these different little pieces that like you can Google which natal chart house rules what do you want to know about, and find out which house rules that, and then you can look at like what's going on in that house. The houses and the ascendant, that's the part that requires the birth time. So we'll get into, when we do the example, we'll get into more of why it matters, like why you wouldn't necessarily want to just like use a random birth time. And as far as learning the houses and really any of it, you can get so many cool cheat sheets. If you just Google 12 houses natal chart, and then go to the images tab on Google, you can get all kinds of cheat sheets that are already made, that as you're studying and you're looking up stuff, and just looking at your chart in general, these can make it feel a lot more attainable, that like you have the cheat sheets where like you have that information pulled together as you try to unpack it all. Okay, so one little bit more, and then I think we'll be ready for the example. So the placements, whoops, there we go. Placements, that's the next word we're going to talk about. And that is the location of all the celestial bodies in the sky. That's their placement. And this is something that we can say by sign. So like every single planet on the thing is in a certain sign. You can see the little blue lines that tag the symbol back to the sign that it's in. And then it's also in a house. And based on, now we know how like around the center of the circle, those are the houses. We can say, okay, well, these two things on the left here, those are both in the 12th house. So already we're being able to read and understand and be able to Google, okay, what does it mean for something to fall in the 12th house? The numbers that you see on all of the different symbols, those are degrees. Degrees are not necessarily the most important thing for a beginner to want to know about. It is a fun rabbit hole once you get along in your learning astrology adventure. But for the most part, it's just a way of being really specific about where something is in a certain sign. So like if you look at the Zodiac Wheel, all these signs around the outside, they're all the same size, which isn't entirely true in the sky itself, but for the sake of the wheel, they're all 30 degrees, and 30 times 12 is 360, and 360 degrees is a circle. So they're all equally sized on the wheel. They all go from 0 to 29 degrees and 59 minutes. Minutes is like the little number up to the right of the bigger number. And again, just to further differentiate where exactly that is. Like these are both, these two things here are both at 17 degrees, but they are slightly different in the minutes. So they're not exactly at the same spot, just really, really close. So yeah, those are degrees. Not, like I said, not the most important thing. Eventually, they say critical degrees, like those are the ones to really watch for, are 0 and 29. That you can Google critical degrees natal chart and read all about that if you have placements that are at 0 degrees or 29 degrees. Otherwise, it's not really that important. It's mostly just to differentiate between placements in the same sign. You can talk about it in terms of degrees. So when you put all those together, I saw this in something I was reading yesterday, and I think it's just this simple. So the planet or the celestial body is telling you what is happening. For example, the sun. The sun in astrology represents our gifts, the light that we came to shine in the world, our unique individual personality. All of that is represented by the sun. So that's the what. And then the sign that it's in. So if my sun is in Gemini, The Gemini is how it's happening. So I'm expressing my gifts through the sign of Gemini. That means my gifts are going through that Gemini energy, and I take on all of those Gemini qualities. And then the house, that's where it's happening. So if you have, and again, the house is determined based on your time of birth. So even if, I'm born June 19th, 1988, and somebody is born later on that same day, we both have the sun in Gemini, but my sun is in the 3rd house and their sun is in the 9th house somewhere else. And so even just that little distinction, the time of our birth, it's very specific to tell exactly how you intended to use that energy. Again, going back to the toolbox example, it all informs like, what are the tools in your toolbox and how can that help us understand what you came here to do? Okay, so I'm to the example. Are there any questions before I go through an example of how you would read these couple hieroglyphics on the chart and understand what they are? Anything in the chat that needs answered?
Carol, Prasad here. Curious, suppose a planet is 0 degrees, is placed in, let's say, 8th house, but it's 0 degrees in 8th house. So technically, does it belong to 8th house or 7th house?
So when it comes to the houses, I tend to think less in terms of cusps, like, okay, is it more the 7th house or more the 8th house? If it landed in the 8th house, I tend to go with that and just say, okay, this landed in the 8th house. Like even just in this example, this is somewhat close to the border between this is the 11th house and this is the 12th. I don't really treat it like it's a cusp and it shares some of both. I more treat it like, okay, that for sure landed in the 12th house. That being said, there are different house systems that you can choose, like going back to that advanced chart selection, there's all different kinds of, there's all different kinds of different systems. Like this that I'm showing you, like up here in the left, it shows you, I don't know how to say that word. It's either Placidus or Placidus or something along those lines. That's the chart style that I'm using, the house system. There's also something called whole sign where it forces each house to only be on one sign wide. All the houses are exactly the same size. So if a house placement like doesn't totally resonate, there are reasons why, you might resonate more with your whole sign chart versus your Placidus chart, or, something like that, like there's a lot of different ways and methods and chart styles in astrology. And so if the one you're looking at doesn't resonate, then there could be a reason for that. And that's where I would say, like, consult an astrologist, or there's a ton of Facebook groups on Facebook, imagine that, get in one of those and ask a question or something like that. There's always people that are willing to help out, that are willing to help people learn. So if it doesn't resonate, don't beat your head against the wall. It could be the chart itself, that like a different cast of it, like changing the way you're looking at the chart could fix that and make it resonate more.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this example, there are two little icons in the red box, and in the first one, whoops. So when we look at the symbol that's there, then it's just a matter of getting over here in this list and finding the same symbol. So that is the same as this, and that tells me that that symbol is Mars, and that it's at 17 degrees Pisces. So even if you didn't know what the two lines of the blue was, it's telling you on this little chart here that Mars is in Pisces. So that lets you know that, okay, so I Google Mars in Pisces. And that would be good to understand, because Mars is a very fiery planet. It's our passion, it's our drive, our animal instincts, our subconscious, like deep desires. That's what Mars represents in astrology. And Pisces is a water sign. It's like the depth of emotion. It's all about like being of service to other people and nurturing the collective consciousness. And so acting on your own animal instincts, not really aligning totally with the Mars energy. So, you know, this again is my chart. And what that means is that I assert myself in very passive ways. And I've beat up on myself a lot for that over the course of my lifetime. Like, why can't you be more assertive? Why can't you just be more direct? Yada, yada, yada. And seeing this and learning about Mars and Pisces, I was like, I'm just never going to be direct. I'm just never going to be a stand up and roar to assert myself kind of person. Like, I'm going to play the long game. I'm going to play the quiet game. I'm going to try to like energetically work it out before I have to actually take action and confront the situation head on. So it's good to understand about my own personality. You know, my Mars is in Pisces. So that's the story that I found when I started doing the Googling Mars in Pisces. The other option or the other icon that's sitting there is the true node, also known as the North Node, and it's also at 17 degrees Pisces. So that's where you would Google true node in Pisces, and that's going to tell its own story. The North Node or the true node is our soul's purpose. So it points at an energy that we came here to learn and incorporate into our soul's evolution. Usually it's an energy that has been left out of past lifetimes, so it feels unknown. It's usually a part of our shadow early on because we don't possess that energy. So people who are heavy in that energy tend to rub us the wrong way. All kinds of fun stuff that we can learn about the true node, and mine's in Pisces. So what does that mean? So these all just tell a different piece of the story. And then we get to, number one, keep our bullshit detector alive and ready, and always run anything that you're reading when you're doing all these Googles. There's so much out there, and run it all through your own filter of, does this make sense? Does it feel good to believe this? There's a lot of people out there saying a lot of things, and I tend to interpret every single piece of my natal chart and every other natal chart that I look at as a superpower. I try to find the positive, like the silver lining of, why would I want my energy to be that way? I knew it would serve me. So how is this really painful, really distracting piece of my energy, how is it serving me? And why is this a superpower? And that's how I break down my chart. And like I said, any other charts that I'm looking at. There are people out there that will tell you, like, this is a hard placement and this means like you're never going to find anybody. You can't say stuff like that. We all get to grow. We get to evolve energetically. And yeah, I think when you understand what you're working with energetically, it lets you approach life very differently. Like, now that this example is perfect, like now that I understand, oh, my Mars is in Pisces, not only do I let myself off the hook more, but I also, like, in a more gentle way, encourage myself to step outside of my comfort zone and address things more head on. But I do it in a way where I'm totally understanding. I know this is not your forte. Like, I know you don't like it. It makes you cringe inside. But just do it. And then I reward myself heavily when I'm able to step outside my comfort zone. So all of that comes from just like a deeper self-understanding. So same thing for the house. So again, on this chart, these two placements we can see are in the 12th house. So as we go through each of them, Mars in Pisces, we did that Google, and now we do Mars in the 12th house. So that's a second Google. And at the end of that, we now know Mars in Pisces, what that means. We also know Mars in the 12th house. We know what that means. And in our mind, we get to be creative and kind of paint those two narratives into one to understand our unique Mars energy. So when it comes to everything Mars stands for, passion, drive, animal instincts, your deepest desires, the physical energy that animates you to do what you came here to do, we can understand Mars in Pisces, Mars in the 12th house, like that puts a really funky spin on that Mars energy. And as long as you understand what you're working with, that's the whole point. So do the same thing for North Node in the 12th house. Again, you kind of paint those two pictures together as you learn each side of it individually. So Misha had brought up transits earlier, so we'll touch on those. The example we just did is of these two icons that are on the inside of the wheel there in Pisces. Those are our natal placements. Natal means that it is related to the time and location of your birth. That's literally what the word natal means. So your natal placements are the placements from when you were born. So those placements inside the wheel, they don't change. Those natal placements are yours for the rest of your life. Around the outside of the wheel, the little green icons, those are transits. So transits and placements, not the same thing. Like you can already see that just from the little bit of the chart we can see here. My natal placements have these two things in Pisces and that's it. But on April 8th, the date that I took this screenshot, the moon and Neptune are both in Pisces. So the transits are the location on any particular day. So usually we're pulling transits for today, and that's pretty common. You can also go backwards, like this is super fun. Fun thing to do, like in your Friday night rager, is to like go backwards in your transits. So back to life events that really shaped you and see if you see anything that, wow, like there was a lot going on in this part of my chart, or these two planets were lined up exactly. Let me Google that and see what it means. So yeah, transits are kind of a next level understanding of astrology and really milking it for all it's worth. I only bring it up to say you're gonna run into the word transit a lot when you start Googling and trying to read stuff. It's always gonna wanna know, is this natal or transit? And that means like, is it natal? Like, was it like that when you were born? Or is this transit, meaning it's happening in the sky right now for everybody? Like right now, everybody is having this same conjunction of Sun conjunct Venus. Conjunct just means that they're sitting side by side. So everybody, those transits are happening the same in the sky for everybody. But, you know, I don't have anything right here in Venus. But if my sun was right there, that would be a very different experience. So that's why the transits on your unique natal chart can be a really interesting rabbit hole to fall down. And it just updates the little table here. So again, these are your natal placements. That's the same as what we were looking at before. The Mars is at 17 degrees Pisces. But if we go on around, Mars is actually in Gemini at 21 degrees right now today. Again, on April 8th, on Thursday. So that's the difference between natal and transit. And as you're Googling Mars in Pisces, usually it's going to give you an interpretation of like, here's what that means if it's natal in your natal chart, when it was true when you were born, or here's what it means in transit. So that is a nice stopping point for questions, if there are any.
So again, Prasad here, Carol.
Hi.
So how, looking at the transit placements, how could that help, you know, find out things in relation to the natal placements? So how could it help for a beginner, or even for an astrologer? How could it help predict things, or, you know, how is it beneficial?
Yeah, so the easiest way I can explain it is that when you have something transiting, meaning it's moving in the sky over your natal placement, like for example, right now, Neptune is like right there with my Mars and Neptune, and North Node. So Neptune is transiting my natal Mars and my natal North Node. It lights it up. That's what I'm going to say. Like energetically, it shines a spotlight on it. And so what you would Google, and let me just put this in the chat real quick, because this formula, this little word formula, you can pop whatever transits you got in there. So like transit Neptune conjunct natal. So that what I just put in the chat is transit Neptune, this little green guy, transit Neptune, is conjunct, which means next to natal Mars. They are next to each other in the sky. So when you Google that, It's going to tell you what it means for Neptune's energetic influence to be side by side with your natal Mars energy. And it'll have an effect. It's part of the energy soup. I don't get super specific in predictive astrology because I do believe, A, it's your whole chart. It's not just one transit. And B, there's so much free will and there's so much like where are you at in your healing journey, and are you ready for the next level, or is this a lesson that you're just repeating it over and over? Like, there's so many different things that what happens to you in your life is still very much a reflection of you and your energy and where you are. The natal chart is good to understand the energy soup, and the natal placements, the inside part that doesn't ever change, that's kind of like how you're wired. And then the stuff going on the outside, that's like, you know, are you sitting in onion soup or pea soup? Like, it just kind of depends. Like, all of that changes. And those influences, they matter. They make a difference. Probably the one that's the easiest to tune into in terms of transits is the moon. The moon is the fastest moving thing that we have right here near us, and it circles the zodiac every 29 days. So that's fast. That means it spends like only 2 to 3 days per sign. And so every 2 to 3 days, the moon moves into a different sign. And so the moon, it actually is like transiting all of your natal placements once a month. And that's a whole thing all by itself. Is like even just having the moon go over your sun or your Venus, or, you know, it all has its own energetic influence. And that's kind of just one Google at a time, like transit moon conjunct natal Mars, transit moon conjunct natal sun, transit moon conjunct natal Venus. And you can read all about all of those different transits that the moon is doing once a month. All the planets, though, they're moving at their own speeds. The moon just happens to move the fastest. Like the sun makes a lap in 365 days. So like the sun is typically, I think it's within 2 days, back to the exact same point it was on the date of your birth. So our solar return, or like the sun coming back to where it was when we were born, we celebrate that day as our birthday. All the planets make returns. So like transits are also good to look at, because if you're having a return, that just means that that planet is coming back to where it was when you were born. And all of these planets have cycles. Like, you know, I don't know if you subscribe to this, but I got this one from Dolores Cannon. She says, like, Earth is a school. We came here to learn lessons. And so again, your natal chart also kind of points to what lessons you came here to learn, at least which energy you came here to study. And as these planets make their laps around, it's like the teacher coming back around and saying, like, hey, are you learning the lessons that you said you would learn? And so you can often trace like transitions in your life, like moving to a new place or starting a new job or getting fired from a job. Like a lot of those transitory type experiences you can trace back to a transit that was happening on your natal chart that like helped you move on. Like a lot of times we get really comfortable as humans, like change is, you know, not always our top choice. And the transits usually help like give us a kick in the pants. That's like, you came here for a reason. So let's be doing what we need to be doing to move forward in that purpose. So the transits can tell us a lot about the energy that we're feeling in any given day, like the energy that's coming in from the outside, versus the natal planets are very much what's coming from inside of you, if that makes sense.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I do have a thing for soups. Energy soup, it just makes sense. As far as like, I feel like I'm swimming in the energy soup most days. Other people contribute to the soup. The moon contributes heavily to the soup, on and on and on. Yeah. Let's see. Misty says, I've heard that it takes 27 years for your original natal happenings, planets, and such to be back in your astrological sky. Is that true? So it depends on the planet. So like we said about the moon, it goes back to where it was when you were born once every 29 days. you have a lunar return once a month. But Pluto is the other end of that spectrum, moves the slowest. And you think about it, Pluto is all the way out here. So like when it makes the lap, that lap is like way bigger than what the moon is doing. The moon's right up against us and it can go really fast. So Pluto takes like 249 years to make a lap. So we don't, as humans, live to see our Pluto return. Or Neptune, I don't think. Uranus is probably the longest one. Uranus takes 84 years to make a rotation. So you have a Uranus return at age 84. You can look forward to that. Otherwise, like some of the other ones are like Mercury, Venus, they return once a year. Mars returns once every 2 years. Jupiter is a really good one. Jupiter is blessings and benefits and expansion and all kinds of nice things. Jupiter returns once every 12 years. Chiron is our wound that represents our healing, and we as wounded healers, the medicine that we came to give to other people. And Chiron returns once every 49 years. So there's a lot of different ones. Each planet has its own orbit and its own place in the solar system and its own speed with which it moves. So if you're interested in that, I would highly recommend my YouTube video that I did for Astro Beginners that was on the personal and social planets, which would be Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Floyd asks, the moon sign is where the moon is placed. Correct. So like someone born April 8th, for example, or April 8th, 2021, like when I pulled this a couple days ago, the moon was here in Pisces. So like the moon, or that day, it would have been a Pisces moon. And so then you would just Google moon in Pisces. Let me see, I think I skipped. I know that we have an ascendant sign and a sun sign. I heard that we also have a moon sign. What is this? So the moon specifically represents our emotional selves, our emotional needs, how we express emotion, how we feel in our emotions, how we relate to them internally, how much they seep into the outside world for other people to see. All of that is understood through the moon and which sign it's in. The moon is such a good one. It's very impactful because it moves so fast, because it's so close to the earth. Like you think about, I mean, the moon literally controls the tide of the ocean. Like it ebbs and it flows, it's high tide, it's low tide. That's the moon's influence, and it's basically doing the same thing to us. Like we have moments of high tide or low tide, and it kind of pulls on all of us differently depending on where our natal moon is. But that's the idea, is that our energy is not constant, it's very fluid. And the way our natal planets are situated tells us a lot about how fluid and what that energy looks like. Also, the transits tells us a lot about what that's going to look like. Floyd says, I think Misty is talking about the Saturn return in 27 years, Saturn coming back to original position at time of birth. So Saturn return is at 29 years, and pretty much all the returns, they fade in for a couple years and they fade out for a couple years. The Saturn one would, because it's so slow moving, but like Mercury, it's going to fade in for a few weeks and fade out for a few weeks because it only takes a year. But yeah, Saturn does return at 29 years. So I think that is, I might have missed some questions. If I did, I apologize. Feel free to throw them back in the chat if I didn't already answer it, and we'll get it next time I stop. So this little table.
Kelly, do you want to put your contact info and also your YouTube station in the chat?
Sure.
For people to access it.
Yeah. So I put my contact info in there before. Do I need to put it again?
I would again, and I had it, but then I Googled something else and copied it.
Okay.
I promise I'll keep it.
Okay. All good.
Thanks.
Alrighty, that's okay. So that is the YouTube channel. And that is the website. Okay. Okay, so this little table is one of my faves. It's one of the first things I look at when I pull up a new natal chart because, we'll take that off for just a second, because it gives us a quick visual representation of how dynamic, how balanced the person's energy is. And like mine is pretty equal. Like I got a pretty equal amount of all four elements, which are what the rows represent. So F, A, E, and W along this side stand for fire, air, earth, and water. So just like we all have all 12 zodiac signs, we all also have all four elements. So we might prefer to use water or earth or air or whatever. We might be really heavy in one of them, but that doesn't mean we're not still all four of them. So fire energy is basically our passion, our creativity, literally our inner fire. Air is typically intellectual energy or mental energy, like ideas and thoughts fall into there. Earth is literally physical reality, physical manifestations, things that we can create and experience with our tangible physical senses. And then water energy are emotions and intuition and the stuff that we just know in our gut, that we know without knowing, or if we get chill bumps, that is our water energy working within us. And so, yeah, we all have all four of those. This is another one that I throw it out there because this is what they say. And I don't know if I fully buy into it, but this is kind of how the textbook reads, is that fire and air energy are masculine energies and earth and water are feminine energies. And I don't know how much I believe that, mostly because there are signs like Capricorn, for example, that literally, that's an earth sign, which is feminine, but it literally stands for the divine father, like the inner father, the divine masculine. Like, so how is that in the feminine side? So anyway, so it's not a perfect classification, but each zodiac sign does have a masculine, feminine categorization. And so when you look at this chart, again, you're understanding like, is the person really dominant in feminine energy or really dominant in masculine energy, or a good mix of both? And again, that's something that, like, understanding that about yourself, and it makes sense that mine is very equal. I've always known that. So it can tell you a lot and give you kind of a sense of comfort if you're able to loop it back around to the belief at the beginning where we chose our energy, like we chose our entry point, we chose to have it be like that. So if you're really dominant in one or the other, like I personally choose to believe that it's intentional, whatever it is. Okay, so then the columns, so the three letters across the top are C, F, and M, and they stand for cardinal, fixed, and mutable. So for these, think about the 4 seasons. And we'll start with spring because that's where we are right now. We're in Aries season, which is the cardinal fire sign. The cardinal sign is always the first sign of that season. That's cardinal energy. It happens at the beginning of things. And that's literally what cardinal energy is good at, is like launching new projects, coming up with new ideas, creating on a blank slate. Yeah, like very, very enthusiastic and confident that they can create new things. And then you get into the middle of each season, and that's where you find the fixed energy. So the middle of spring is Taurus, and so Taurus is the fixed earth sign. And how you would read this this table then is like find the fixed, like let's say I want to see where my Taurus placements are. Well, it's the middle of spring, so it's a fixed sign, and it's an earth sign. So this box right here is Taurus. And each of those 12 boxes on that grid is one of the 12 zodiac signs. So That's how you would read that. And then mutable is the end of each season. So I like to look at it both ways. Like, are they balanced this way, like between the 4 elements? And then also look at it this way, like, are they heaviest on cardinal or fixed or mutable? Because right off the bat, that can tell you a lot about a person. Like somebody who's really heavy in cardinal energy, you could probably guess right off the bat that they suck at follow through. And like actually doing, like seeing things all the way through to the end is not their strong suit. Their strong suit is in the cardinal end of things, the beginning, the excitement of something new. That's where they thrive. Fixed energy is really more good at the long term, like finishing things and that. And then mutable energy is basically what it sounds like. It kind of adapts and goes with the flow, and whatever the environment around it is doing, mutable energy can kind of figure it out and adapt to whatever it needs to be in that particular moment. I think that's pretty good. So any questions in the chat before I move on from there? Yes, Max, totally. It can, like, when you see it on your natal chart, it can be so validating to be like, oh my gosh, like this is how I meant for it to be. This is an article that explains like exactly what I've been feeling my whole life, but haven't ever had the words for. Yeah, there's so much rich self-awareness available by studying our natal chart and figuring out like, what does all this crazy stuff mean as far as my energies. What to do when you are imbalanced? I am heavy earth. So oh, and I missed one of that. Gemini is more cardinal. Gemini is the end of spring, so it is technically a mutable energy. And then what to do when you are imbalanced? I am heavy earth. So, you know, balance is an idea that I think doesn't really exist as like an objective factual conclusion, like what is balance. I don't think that's really a thing. It's more like, how do you play to your strengths, and how do you put yourself in an environment where your heavy earth energy is going to thrive? How do you understand yourself better so that you can be gentle with yourself? So if you are in a place where, you know, really this is like emotional territory where water energy would be really helpful, or this is like my passion and my creativity and wanting to like chase my dreams, which is kind of a fire energy thing. Like if you're really light in those areas, it's good to know, you know, like when you find yourself in that emotional situation and you're wanting to like make a plan about how are we going to feel our way through this, like it's just good to understand yourself so you can let yourself off the hook. And then also try to match yourself up with people and places and jobs and things that are good matches with your energy. Because that's the thing, like we can't really do anything about our natal chart. Like it's a snapshot from the moment we were born. It is what it is. So how can we be grateful for it the way that it is? Find our superpowers within it, find the things that are challenging about it, and really focus into, okay, yes, that's challenging, and maybe I would prefer, maybe it would be easier if it was different, but it's not different. So because I have this challenging energy, what have I learned from it? How have I grown? How am I a different or a better person because I had this challenging energy that I had to work with and grow around? Yeah, because I mean, I go back to, I personally anchor into the belief that we chose it, and so it was on purpose. So I think your heavy earth energy was on purpose, that really strong earth energy helps you to do whatever it is that you were born to do, that you're going to need that amount of earth energy to do whatever that soul mission is. Yeah, let me get the chat back open. I think there was some other stuff. How are we doing on time? Oh, very good. Explain mutable again, thanks. So mutable is the end of each season. So like, for example, the end of spring is Gemini season. And mutable is adaptable, is another word to think of as synonymous with mutable. It just means that you can think off, like off the top of your head, fly by the seat of your pants. Like you can react and respond. And the 4 mutable signs are Sagittarius, Gemini, Virgo, and Pisces, and they all respond in different ways. Like Gemini is going to respond by coming back with like, here's some random factoids about, like let's say your friend comes to you and says, here's this problem that I'm facing, and here's the struggle, and here's what I've thought about it, and I don't know what to do. Can I have your advice? Gemini and Pisces are both going to be really capable of like responding off the top of their head to that situation, but what they say will be so very different, where Gemini is going to try to teach you something about whatever it is that you're going through and share information. Pisces is going to meet you more on an emotional level and more give you emotional support based on how they're sensing you're handling your struggles emotionally. So again, it's all about the strengths of each sign. And as you understand what your placements are, it gets a lot easier to see yourself doing good in more situations more often. Like you see on my chart here, like I'm heavy air and not a whole lot of water. I have some, not a ton. And so, yeah, consoling people in emotional situations, like if they're freaking out and crying and hysterical, like I don't know what to do. I wouldn't know where to begin. That is not my strong suit, never has been. And when I look at this chart, that makes a lot of sense to me. So it's about knowing your strengths and then playing to those. Like I would never put myself in a situation where that's my job, to console crying people. Like that would be silly because that doesn't play to my strengths. So yes, this is about understanding like what are your superpowers and how do you set yourself up for success. Robin also put in there about, yeah, like how you can best soothe yourself and just all kinds of things about what's good self-care for fire signs and water signs. We all need something a little bit different. Like our recipe for success and well-being is different for each of us on an individual basis. Okay. Yes. All right. Onward and upward. Okay, so we will touch real briefly on aspects. Aspects is the first subject that I'll do in advanced astro. We'll do a whole deep dive on the crazy lines in the middle of your chart. That's basically what we're looking at here over on the right. It's these, all the different dotted lines, and there's red ones and blue ones and green ones and on and on and on. What does that actually mean? That is my favorite part. Personally, it's the conversation that your placements are having with each other. So that is very interesting because not just, Mars is in Pisces and Pluto is in Scorpio, but how are those two things talking to each other? Do they like each other? Are they getting along? Are they supporting each other? Do they hold hands and skip along and sing fa la la? Or are they screaming in each other's faces that you're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong? And we all have some of both of that. Typically, you see some harmonious aspects, which are the nice conversations, the parts of our energy that get along well with each other. Those are typically the blue lines on the natal chart. And then we all usually have some hard aspects, which are the red lines typically. And those are more challenging. That's energy that it's hard to handle when you first land with it. It's like some assembly required. Like you're not going to be able to just like come right out of the box and be really successful with this energy. You're going to have to learn how to use it first. And then once you've mastered this hard energy or this hard aspect in your natal chart, those are usually some of the most powerful tools that you brought with you, are the ones that you knew you were going to have to figure out how to use once you got here. The easy aspects, the easy energy that you have if stuff is getting along well, that's really nice. It helps with sanity and stuff like that. But as far as growth and evolution of your soul, easy energy doesn't get the job done. The hard energy and the challenging aspects are what creates the context for our soul's growth in this lifetime. So I don't like to think about like, oh, well, if I could go back, like I'd only put easy aspects in my chart, or, I'm a victim of this hard aspect that's in my chart. It's painful and it hurts and I don't know how to do it and I'm a victim to my energy. I don't personally subscribe to that philosophy. I think we can all learn about our energy and understand how it presents, and then, you know, through mindfulness, basically, we can choose, you know, do we want to continue to repeat those patterns, or do we want to make a more informed choice? And there are spectrums of behavior associated with all the placements, all the aspects. There's, you know, the dark side and the light side is basically how I sum it up in the YouTube video for the 12 zodiac signs. There's a light side and a dark side to every single zodiac sign. Like, I love it when I see the post on Facebook, like which zodiac sign do you hate the most, or something like this. I'm like, well, first of all, we're all of them, and second of all, like, if somebody is being an asshole, you can't automatically say that that means that Geminis are an asshole or Capricorns are an asshole. Like, it means that guy on that day was having a rough minute, and his behavior is a reflection of him, not the zodiac sign in general. Every single sign has a dark side where if they're stressed, if they're tired, if they're hungry, if, you know, things, their needs are unmet, basically. And if your needs aren't met, it's hard to be a nice person. If your needs are totally met and you're more on the light side of that energy, there's a high frequency expression of every single zodiac sign. They're all capable of pure brilliance in their own unique way. So they're all different, no doubt about it. And that's where the aspects come in. Sometimes your placements are sitting harmoniously with each other, and sometimes they are really butting heads and disagreeing on what's the right way to do something. And you think about playing that out as far as, like, if you have this side of yourself that says, I want to go this way, and this side of yourself that says, I want to go this way, which way do you go? I want to go this way, but I also want to go this way. Which way do you go? Like, that can be really, really maddening. Like, it's either you pick one and a part of you is disappointed. No matter which way you pick, part of you is disappointed, or you don't go anywhere because you can't decide. You can't move in two different directions at once, but one of you wants to go this way and one of you wants to go that way. And what do you do with that? Like, that's really annoying at a minimum. So yeah, and those are typically oppositions and squares. So oppositions and squares, those are two different names of aspects. And they all, there's I don't think I put one in here. No, I did not. Yes, I did. Let's just carry on here. So this table is in the natal chart that you export, is the aspect table. So this is showing for all of your different placements, and these are your placements along here. That stair step down, that's everything that you put on the chart. And it's showing, for example, the sun and the moon. Should stick with my thing here. Okay. So all of these little symbols, I mean, I didn't start off knowing what all of those meant. That's another trip to Google Images. Aspect symbols astrology. So the aspect symbols, what do they mean? And that's when you can find a little chart like this, and it will show you all of the different symbols that you can see in an aspect table, and it'll tell you what it's called. You don't really need to know, like, what does a sextile mean? That's what we're looking at here. So like this one right here is saying that the sun is sextile the moon. So that's what I would type into Google, is sun sextile moon. And so I don't have to know what any of that means to be able to read the aspect table and type that into Google and then have it tell me a story about what does it mean when your planets are sitting like that. That's definitely a lot to Google. Like, if you think about, you know, I've been studying my natal chart. I looked at it for the first time pretty much exactly 8 months ago. And I'm still discovering new pieces that I've never looked into before. So I'm a big proponent in, like, whatever's on your mind, you know, whatever's relevant in your life at any given time. Probably one of the first things that I got into was moon signs, because I knew high level that that's our emotions. And I've always had really powerful, sometimes intense emotions. And So one day when I was feeling particularly triggered, I Googled, like, how do Leo moons get their feelings hurt? And how do they not get their feelings hurt is more the shorter answer to that question. But it was really helpful to read about, like, here's some things, some themes that are common to Leo moons. And so in that reading, I was able to see myself. I was able to see the exact situation that just happened that had triggered me. They said something doubting that I could do what I said I was going to do, and that hurt my feelings and made me doubt myself, yada, yada, yada. So when you're dealing with something, like if you're going through something with your relationship or your work, like natal chart career, and Google a phrase like that, and it'll start to show you, like, these are the pieces and these are the placements that you can look at to understand each of the different life areas that are going on for you. I also recommend starting with the big three. So those are the three most influential placements in your natal chart. So if, as you're starting out, or as you start getting into like social media groups around astrology, the big three, that's an easy way that people relate to each other. It's like taking sun signs, which is what most people know, like, what's your sign? Most people can answer that question and they know what their sun sign is. Figure out your moon sign and your rising sign if you have your time of birth, and then also do the houses for the sun and the moon sign. So again, like the sun in the 3rd house or the sun in the 9th house, that's going to tell you another story on top of just sun in Gemini. Same for the moon signs. And it is like wherever, going back to that table, which so going back to this table, that's what that's telling you. So you look for wherever the moon is and then scroll across to the natal listing. So for my chart, the moon was in Leo when I was born. And so that's what you would Google is, and that's your moon sign then. You also have a Mercury sign that's listed there, your Venus sign, like that's what that means is what was the placement? Where was it located at the time of your birth? And so you have a sign for all of the different planets that we can include on the natal chart. We are almost done, and then we'll have all this time left for questions. So this was about where do I start? Like if you've never Googled anything on your chart before, I would say use this. And that's going to get the momentum going, get the ball rolling as far as you figuring out how to do your own research, is, those 5 Googles. And then from there, it's a choose your own adventure story as far as like, what's going on? Like, what do you want to know about? I mean, you could literally take that list of all the different planets and where are they, and you could Google each of those individually and their houses. You could start into the aspects, which are those crazy lines in the middle, and Googling each of the things that are on your aspects table. Usually it just depends, like what I'm in the mood for, or I open up my natal chart and I'm looking at it. This is what happened this morning. I was looking at it and I was like, I've never seen that before. That's not always been there. Yeah, it's always been there. It's been the same since I was born. And so now I'm Googling a brand new thing that I've looked at it 1,000 times over the last 8 months and I've never noticed that before. And I'm a big believer that your intuition is going to point out the thing that you're supposed to read about today. So like if you've never seen it before, you weren't supposed to. And on the day when you finally notice it, give it a Google and enjoy the ride of reading about your life story. Yeah, those aspects can be super fun. And it's like the gift that keeps on giving, truly, because if you're a person that loves to learn and loves to continuously absorb new information, astrology is an excellent hobby. There's always more. There's always more layers to the onion that you can peel. So I'll remind you, and I'll put my YouTube link over there again. These videos are available on my YouTube channel for Astro Beginners. So those are each 90 to 120 minutes of deep dives into those pieces. So that's several hours of content getting into talking about the actual nuts and bolts of all of these different energies. We haven't even started on that. This is just how to read the natal chart itself and its various pieces. And then also, I'm going to put my link to join me if you want to follow along on any of these future sessions, like Advanced Astro that's coming over the summer. I do sessions just like this, where you can join live and I take questions and cover some material. And then I also do my group chart readings. So that's where I actually pull up somebody's natal chart and in front of the group do 5 to 10 minutes of interpretation on that specific natal chart. So everyone is welcome at that as often as you want. It's totally free to come and get that free mini reading. And then this, I'll put my my link over there. So Soul Aligned Living is my meetup group, just like Kendara's meetup group is what brought us here today. My meetup group is Soul Aligned Living, so that's where all of my events are found, and I'll throw that in the chat here in just a second as well. And that is all I have for you as far as my presentation goes, and that leaves us with like 30 minutes for questions. I'm sure we'll fill it up, no problem. And while we
This is
get
amazing.
those, I'm gonna put some links in the chat. So come back out of this.
So will you come back next year and do it again?
Totally, for
Awesome.
sure.
Okay, guys, next year this time.
Oh, if that's what it says, Miho, I typed it wrong. There's an I missing, so let me do it again.
Oh.
.com. It's helpful if you spell it correctly. And then my YouTube channel, she put that again, that's right there. And then I'll grab my meetup link. So that's free to join to follow along with any of the live events that I'm doing. And then also, I record most of them at this point and put them on my YouTube channel. So if you ever can't attend, no worries, that's always there. And then there's the meetup group as well.
And then this is going to be on Facebook Live also, everybody, if you want to watch it again. So just go to my Facebook page and enjoy.
Sure. So scrolling back up in the chat, there's a bunch. Okay. Okay, so Misty asked, I'm 6 masculine, 4 feminine, and really heavy mutable fire, which is Sagittarius. Heck, my whole chart is almost fully ruled by the centaur. This is more of an opinion question. Is that a good thing? And also, is that normal to have one single sign monopolizing your chart? So I think a common phrase when you get into human behavior, psychology, mental health, all of that, like what is normal? You know, I don't really like to talk about that, but if that's how it is from your natal chart, then I would say like you wanted it that way. And Sagittarius energy, mutable fire, is a very powerful energy in terms of enthusiasm and optimism and passion for life and an ability to be free and be independent and have the courage to travel and explore and all of those wonderful things. So if you have heavy influences as far as having a lot of signs or a lot of planets in Sagittarius, that's what you wanted. You wanted those skills to be really dominant within you. You didn't want to have to reach too far to find your freedom and your independence. It's pretty natural to you, I would imagine, if you have that many things there. As far as normal to have like a bunch of planets in one sign, so that's called a stellium, ST, just put it in here. And there's some debate on exactly what constitutes a stellium, but basically, when you have multiple planets in the same sign or the same house. So if you have a cluster of planets somewhere in your natal chart, that was probably on purpose to a certain extent. Like you wanted a heavier focus of energy, either in that sign or in that house, is how I choose to believe it. So that being said, you know, you wanted those Sagittarius skills, and that's going to present challenges. You know, every sign has its abilities and its inabilities. That's why we have all of them, is because they're all uniquely talented at different things. Sagittarius is really good at getting excited about new stuff. Again, not so great with the follow through. And if you have heavy Sagittarius energy, best to make your life and your living and your relationship and all of that really cohesive and harmonious with you having freedom and you having the creative control to run with your own ideas and not have to check with someone for permission and all of that kind of stuff. Like if you know that about yourself, that you're using a lot of Sagittarius energy, you just set yourself up for success and try to find yourself an environment where it's conducive to you getting to flow like that. If you're in an environment with all that Sagittarius energy where you're expected to keep a schedule, you have to be there at a certain time on these certain days, and you don't get to decide like last minute, like, oh, I don't feel like going. Like, that's probably not the best suited job for you. Like, I personally have a lot of Sagittarius, a lot of Gemini, so very heavy mutable energy. And I do best when I don't have a schedule, period. I like to just keep my schedule totally open-ended and just let the day take me wherever it's going to take me, whatever I feel like doing. And, you know, some people are heavy earth, and the thought of that, like they're having a panic attack. I'm not even talking about them. So it just kind of depends on who you are and what works best for you so that you're feeling productive within your energy. Let's go back here. All water sounds tough. So much emotion. Yes. It's tough and it's powerful because emotion is our intuition. And if you're flooded with that energy, that means that, yeah, you're feeling a lot all the time, but you also have access to all of that intuitive energy. So it's a matter of kind of learning how to ride the wave of your own energy and not being like caught under like the tidal wave of like it's beating down on you and you're stuck under the water and you're drowning in your energy, versus like you have a surfboard and you're riding on top of it, which is really fun. So as we get older, as we grow and mature and we see our own healing that needs to happen, we're naturally working with our energy and trying to do the best we can. And you know, we all have different challenges that we're facing, different things that we came here to learn. Max says he's glad that he's got a lot of time on his hands. I feel you. It's such a funny thing, like how you start Googling astrology placements and all of a sudden it's 4 hours later and you have no idea like where did the last 4 hours go. I thought it was sunny outside. Well, no, the sun went down a long time ago. Yeah, it's one of those things. I treat it like a hobby. I do it for fun. If I'm not in the mood to study astrology, then I don't. And if I am in the mood to read about it, I pull up my chart, I look at it, I see what pops out at me, you know, like what little symbol is begging me to learn about it. And that's what I Google. And usually from there, it like one thing leads to another thing, leads to another thing. And when you're tired, you stop. So I don't like to teach like you have to go in this order or anything like that, because, you know, I like looking at what pops out on any given day because it almost always is speaking to exactly where I'm at in my life and what's going on. Okay, so Paula asked, what overview can you say about having a grand trine with a kite in your natal chart? So trines are aspects. If I go back to this real quick. So if you look at this, the aspects are the lines in the middle. That's the conversation between the planets. And a grand trine is when you have 3 trines, like one trine is just one side of the triangle. And when you have 3 of them, it goes all the way around. And so when the triangle completes, that's a grand trine. And then the kite is when you also have these 2 aspects. So like you have the bottom of the kite is on there, and that means you'll also have the opposition between the top of the kite and the bottom of the kite. So grand trines are somewhat common, like not everybody has those, but you see them every once in a while, and that is a good thing. Typically, it's like a comfort zone. It's like a very easy energy that you have within your chart, and it can feel like your go-to. Like it's easy to kind of get stuck in that energy. But when you have a kite, like when it does complete on out and it's not just the grand trine, the opposition that's included in the kite creates enough tension that whatever planet is at the base of your kite becomes this outlet point for all of the energy in the kite. Like, so for example, the sun is the base, the rising sign makes this side, it goes up here to Uranus and Saturn, technically there's two of them there, but goes up here to Uranus, comes down to the moon, comes back down to the sun. So those 4 planets in this kite are all connected, and the sun is the outlet. So all of this energy gets moving in a really harmonious way, and it gets channeled out the butt of the kite, and that is the outlet for that energy. And so that's good to know, because like in this example on my chart, the sun is in Gemini, and I tend to be a really antisocial, hermited person. And my sun in Gemini thrives off of connectivity and talking to other people and listening to them and learning from them and just getting to know people in general. And so when I hobbit or hermit and go away for a long time, like my sun can get really antsy, like really, really antsy. And that's because it's not only my sun, it's tied into this whole network of energy in my chart. And I'm depriving all of those things by not engaging and allowing my sun energy to flow, if that makes sense. So whatever planet is at the base of your kite, that one is really, really important. Yes. Scroll back up, give me just a second. Okay. Allison, yes, I will definitely follow up with you afterwards. And then Allison also asked, are certain traits such as being heavy in water or being a water sun sign associated with mental disorders? Let me share this back on here. So I have read articles, and I'm not saying this is true necessarily, but I have read articles that talk about squares and oppositions. So those would be the red lines, like this is a square, and then this where they're opposite each other, that's an opposition. And the opposition is kind of the harder level of a square. They're very similar in the effect that they have, but when you have a lot of those in a chart, it can create instability in the energy. And so, for example, and I have no shame saying this, I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder by 3 separate practitioners. That was back at the end of my teens and early 20s. And I only have a handful, like 6 oppositions in my chart. And I've seen a chart recently that had way more than that. It had, like, let me just show you. I don't think the person would mind. And you, I mean, so at this point, we've only looked at my chart and you have your chart in front of you, but like this one is a good example of someone who does currently deal with mental health instability and has chosen homelessness currently because that is the easiest route. But when you look at this, this, just like we just talked about, like her grand trine, this is what's called a grand cross, and he has, I think, 5 or 6 of them. And all it means is that just like the triangle went all the way around, the square goes all the way around. And that is created by these 2 sets of oppositions. So this opposition between Saturn and the ascendant, and then these oppositions between both the south node and the midheaven, and then all of this stuff down here. And he is still struggling. He has had a very difficult life and he is still struggling. And that is because those oppositions and squares a little bit, it is literally like I described. It's like half of you wants to go this way and half of you wants to go this way. So which way do you go? And that, I mean, he is basically paralyzed into that place of like, no matter what he does, he can't move forward in a satisfying way. And if that's where you are, yeah, you're probably going to be depressed and a little bit pissed off and probably using drugs and alcohol to get the fuck out of there as often as you can, because this is hard and it hurts and it's not what society wants to see from us, you know, necessarily. Like, we get conditioned to be a productive member of society, meaning hold down a job, go to work 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, work 40 years, retire, yada, yada, yada. Somebody like this probably not going to have a life like that. Like, not that they couldn't, but that's not the best environment to set yourself up for success. When you have this much dynamic energy, meaning that he flips back and forth a lot. And that's what bipolar looks like, is like you have these two different ends of energy to move between, and there's not always a lot of warning of like, which side are you going to wind up on? And that's where he's at, is like, you know, he can be going along in his day and all of a sudden pick up some energy somewhere and he's feeling it and he no longer feels like going to work. He needs to go and deal with his mental health. That being said, to your point of the question about water energy, I think it's possible for like in this chart is a perfect example of like, he's got air and earth mostly creating, I mean, this stuff down here in fire, a little bit in water. Like when you look at this, he's got a Scorpio moon, which is intense all by itself, and Scorpio Pluto, but for the most part, he's really not made of water. He's made of these other things. But the relationship of those placements and how they pull us in different directions, I think you probably could, if you analyzed enough charts, start to draw some conclusions around that. But at the same time, like, I do believe that we can practice and work on managing our emotions the best that we can, whatever that looks like for us. And so much of it starts with letting ourselves off the hook for whatever normal is, and just realizing that, like, I'm going to do my best. And sometimes that just means being honest about where I am. And if where I am is I need to go plant myself in the bed for 24 hours and just don't see anybody, I personally need the freedom to be able to do that. And somebody with a chart like that probably would also benefit from the freedom to do that. The issue comes when you force yourself out of the house and you go to work anyway. And now you're getting into altercations and tension and frustration and head-to-head issues out in the real world because your energy is so conflicted on the inside. So it's a process. That chart, I didn't actually talk to the person, I talked to their mom. She wanted to know more how to help him with the issues that he was facing. I've never seen a chart that difficult before. That one was exceptionally hard. Let me scroll back up here. I love all this stuff in the chat. So fun.
It's so interesting when you realize that that could affect mental disorders. It makes me a little more tolerant. So I'm glad you're bringing this stuff up. Thank you.
Well, and that's exactly what she said. I mean, he's late 20s, I think. And so she adopted him when he was born. And because his mom had some mental illness, instabilities of her own, that she gave the baby up for adoption. And so, yeah, my friend took him and has done an amazing job connecting with him and loving him unconditionally and making the best out of everything, supporting him however he needs support. And so I genuinely believe, like, he came to make an impact. You know, sometimes making an impact is messy. Like, we'd love to be in control and the master of our destiny and all that. That's an easier way to go about it. But I mean, sometimes, like, yeah, not having our ducks in a row makes an impact all by itself. So yeah, he's a special soul, no doubt about it. What is solar arc versus progression? So that's an advanced astro question if I ever did see one. So progressed charts are how your chart progresses over time. And that, I believe the difference is everything progresses at different speeds based on how fast it actually moves. And with a solar arc chart, I think everything moves ahead the same number of degrees, like all the placements, and it's based on your age. So like if you're 33, I think everything moves forward 33 degrees. And so it shifts your entire chart. Progressions, like the moon spends 2.5 years per sign, the sun spends 30 years per sign. So like it's very specific, and you can pull a progress chart anytime. That is really getting into advanced astrology though. For any of you who are into that, totally check out Advanced Astro coming this summer. There is so much to learn. It is the gift that keeps on giving. I sometimes, like, I'm heavy air energy, especially Gemini, and so one of my reoccurring fears and anxieties is that I'm going to run out of stuff to learn, and astrology has squashed that fear for the foreseeable future because, yeah, there's so much. Yes. Yes. So Tina asked if you can put charts together on astro.com. Maybe what you mean is Sinistry Charts. Tina, maybe you can clarify that. So Sinistry Charts are where you take two charts and you put them on top of each other, basically creating a natal chart for the relationship that these two people have together. Like, what is the chart of the relationship itself? And so that gets really interesting because kind of like transits light up your chart as the planets move around and it touches your natal placements. Other people's charts touch our natal placements, sometimes in nice ways where we love them and we don't even know why. It feels like I've known you forever. Oh my goodness. You probably have a karmic connection in your Sinistry charts. If you meet someone and you hate the very ground they stand on, you absolutely have a Sinistry connection and they are showing you your own shadow. So the way we feel about other people, whether we like them, we don't like them, usually you can trace it back through your Sinistry charts and see like, oh yeah, they're, you know, whatever, whether it's a good connection or a bad connection. And you can do that on astro.com. I can actually show you guys real quick where that would be. Let me share my screen. So this will be back in extended chart selection. So I'll go back to mine. So if you get an extended chart selection and then the chart type. So there's a lot of different charts that you can pull. And Sinistry chart happens to be the very first one right there. And then up here, it would be who are you wanting to see the Sinistry for? So you can just pop that right in there. And this is what that looks like. So one person's, and if you look, yeah, so like you look down here, you see one person's placements are the blue and the other person's placements are the red. And then when you look, you get to see how does everything match up. So in this particular Sinistry chart, I am drawn to a couple things like this right here, where Dolly's north node is at my Uranus and Saturn. And down here, where my sun and Chiron is where her Saturn is. So our Saturns are both like engaged with each other's chart, meaning we have stuff sitting side by side with both of our Saturns, and we learn from each other. Saturn is a lot about the lessons that we came to learn. So that is just one example of what that would mean to like start Googling and understanding like your Sinistry chart with somebody else, because that would work a lot the same. Like in this example right here, we would do like North Node conjunct Uranus Sinistry. And when you Google that, it knows because you said Sinistry, we're talking about one person's North Node and one person's Uranus. that these are two different people's charts. And so when you Google that, usually it'll talk about the North Node person feels this way and the Uranus person feels this way. And so that's where Sinistry can be a lot of fun. And then, you know, this is where I say, like, you need everybody's birth time. You need to be able to pull the Sinistry chart on every single person you know. It can become, you can rack up 100 charts like in no time, easy peasy. Okay, back in here. Yeah, Robin says, Sagittarius energy often can be challenging to work with in the inflexible structures of modern life and work environments. Totally agree. I would say the same thing for most of the mutable energy. I would say Gemini and Sagittarius has the harder time with structure, especially if it's somebody else's structure. Virgo and Pisces, they are so service oriented and they really, really dislike disappointing other people. So they tend to have an easier time with structure, but still, if their gas tank is empty, they're going to be just as flaky and blowing off plans as Gemini and Sagittarius, because at the end of the day, like, either you have the energy to go or you don't. So like, it's good to know. Like, I saw this one thing that was basically this lady who was like shaking her finger and shaming people who cancel plans last minute, which I am like the queen of canceling plans last minute. And so I took the time to respond. And basically, like, it's only a problem if you're making friends with people who are really, really anal about their schedule. Like, if you're the kind of person that needs the space and the freedom to cancel plans last minute, like, you just make friends that are like that too. And then when you cancel on each other, it's no big deal. So again, it's all about understanding what's my energy, how do I own it, how do I love it, embrace it, and make the best of whatever that looks like. Ooh, Robin, I'll have to put that on my list. She said, also related to the energy of the galactic center, crucial for understanding people with many planets in Sagittarius. I'll have to put that on my list to Google. Could it affect physical disabilities as well? Yes. Your natal chart in general, depending on what the physical disability is, Google it, like just natal chart and whatever it is, and see if you can find something that is closer. But like the ascendant, for example, is our physical body that we were born with. That's what the ascendant represents. So there's a lot out there as far as like, what do Virgo risings look like? What do Taurus risings look like? Because it is our physical self, the body we were born with. So if you have a hard aspect with your ascendant, that could be one of the ways that you might see a physical disability indicator on your chart. Like if you have Chiron conjunct the ascendant or something like that, where like your wound and your physical self, physical representation are side by side, like that's one way that, not that that guarantees a physical disability, but that it could manifest. And even if something severe doesn't manifest, you might still, it's probably still going to manifest like you perceive that you are less, or that your physical appearance is wrong, or something like that. Even if nothing is physically wrong with you, it could still impact your mental perception of yourself. That sounds very interesting, since I'm a Pisces and my best friend is a Leo. I heard that is a very unlikely pairing. It's a, well, like Pisces is mutable water, Leo is fixed fire. So yeah, it's an interesting combination. But I personally subscribe to the belief that any of the zodiac energies can get along well with any of the zodiac energies. Like, really, the way people rub us the wrong way is usually highlighting something inside of ourselves that's ready to be healed. And so, you know, it's not so much about like hating on another zodiac sign, but like taking the cue to take responsibility for that trigger and work on your own self-healing. So I mean, I think the more different the energies are, the more they can learn from each other. The more they can, because like Pisces and Leo, they have different strengths. Leo is, you know, keep in mind, dark side and light side of all of these signs, but like Leo is much more self-centered, much more wanting to be loved and adored and the center of attention, where Pisces is wanting to be a caretaker and be of service and nurture the people around them. So where Leo, to a fault, puts themselves first, Pisces, to a fault, puts themselves last. And so if they're together, they can like teach each other. Like, you know, the Leo is teaching the Pisces how to love themselves more and how to put themselves more at the top of the priority list, take better care of themselves. The Pisces is rubbing off on the Leo, like, hey, maybe the world doesn't revolve around you 24/7. So it can be a give and take if you're in a place with your own spiritual health to be able to learn from other people who are different from you. So yeah, so Sky mentioned, I've always had issues with Leos and I'm a Pisces. I can handle them in little bites, but never in a romantic relationship. I think it's working through shadow work, like Carly mentioned. So totally agree. Like the ones that rub us the wrong way are usually pointing to something about ourselves that is unhealed, that we don't like about ourselves, that we're denying is even part of ourselves or that we're shaming ourselves for, and then we see it in somebody else, especially if they're handling it better than we are. And yeah, so like in that scenario of Pisces and Leo, where Pisces almost turns into, like in their darkest moments, Pisces turns into a martyr, like playing the victim mindset of I take care of everyone, no one takes care of me. That's kind of the dark side of Pisces. And so in that sense, like Leo being totally self-confident and putting themselves first, whether they deserve it or not, like screw everybody else, everybody just needs to look at me. Like, yeah, that's probably going to piss you off if as a Pisces you feel like you deserve to be at the bottom because everybody else deserves to be at the top, and Leos aren't doing it that way. Leos are putting themselves at the top, and everybody has their own reasons. So I think the thing, anytime a sign like rubs you the wrong way, go look at what you have going on in your chart in that sign. And that's a good place to start, because if they're if it's really agitating you to watch them exhibit that behavior, chances are there's something amiss in you that if you got it into alignment, if you healed that little bit, like that's one less trigger in the world that's going to rub you the wrong way, you know? So it's very, very interesting. Sag sun and rising with the Pisces moon. OMG, I don't know where I'm going sometimes. Yeah, I could totally buy that. Like, see, and that's where, you know, Sagittarius is more independent and it's a fire sign. Fire signs naturally have an easier time putting themselves first because everything inside of them feels urgent. There's not time to let anybody else be first. Everything inside of me is urgent. So there's that. And then your Pisces moon is like, but I have an emotional need to give to other people, to be of service, to emotionally nurture others. I would imagine that like the contradiction in those two is probably anchoring you from both directions. Like the Pisces moon makes you way more considerate than your average Sagittarius, and the Sag sun pulls you up out of the Pisces victim mentality. Like Sagittarius is way more actualized, like going forward and going ahead with what they want, like seizing adventure, running after what's exciting to them. And Pisces more like sits back and kind of lets life come to them, lets other people decide, well, what do you feel like doing? And then they're just kind of along for the ride. Sagittarius is more the one that's like calling the shots and be like, well, this looks fun, let's go over here. So you have some of both of that. And if you're possessing contradictory energy, I think it's because you wanted it to be that way and you needed to have both, right? Like you needed these talents and you needed these talents. You needed all those talents to be able to do what you came here to do. I think the closer we get to living our mission, the more our energy feels like it fits us. If we're not doing what we came here to do, our energy feels like it's wrong or it's out of line or it doesn't fit or any of those kinds of things. That just means like you're not putting yourself in the right environment. You're not close enough to your own purpose to feel like your energy makes sense. When you're living your purpose, your energy will feel like it makes good sense. That being said, there's also, so Robin is bringing up in the chat, or she did a minute ago, about how depending on where you live physically in the world, your natal chart can also be lit up in different ways. So there are places in the world where your physical body, your emotional health, your spiritual health, like depending on where you go, there are different places where your energy would be more successful or less successful. So if you were thriving in a certain place and then moved across the country to a different place, and all of a sudden, like you're having depression and anxiety and health problems and all of that, it's called Astrocartography, and there are astrologers out there who specifically do this, where they will look at an astrocartography map and put your natal chart in there and suggest physical locations that would be the most beneficial for your unique energy. So that's like a whole nother wing of astrology and what you can do with it. So, oh, and we are like 2 minutes over time, and there's still all kinds of things in the
That's
chat.
okay, as long as you have time.
I really
I'm
don't.
fine.
I have to get going. They're expecting me at my day job at the grocery store. So
Yeah, thank you for taking time off for that.
I was thrilled to be able to. I am going to put my website over here one more time. From my website, you can find everything that I do. I think probably one of my most favorite things is my podcast. I also have a YouTube channel. I do events like this where we get on Zoom and we look at natal charts. So feel free to check out my Soul Aligned Living meetup group to join me on any future events. And I am just so honored and thrilled that you all were able to make it today. This has been
They're all thanking you and telling you how much
absolutely
they
great.
love it. Me too, thank you.
Yeah, this was great. Oh, yay. I was aiming for a beginner level, and I think I hit the nail on the head. So
You
I'm feeling
totally delivered what you
pretty
promised.
good. Yeah, I like it. Very good. Well, the recording will be available on my YouTube channel, on Kendara's Facebook page. So by all means, feel free to go back and listen to it, and join me on a future session if you're called to do that.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
And join me on the 19th for my psychic development group. I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
I feel like the villain because I have to turn it off, but bye, everybody.
I get it.
Thank
I
you
know.
for coming.
Such a good time. See ya.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Thank you so much. This was really great.
Robin, thanks for your input.
Sure.
Bye,
Yes.
everybody.
So
Thank
good.
you all for your awesome questions and input.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.